each other.
Yeah.
Do not swear on air.
Yeah. I had to put that up for my show because.
It's not a
dude,
podcast. I mean, it's not a
bad trash mouth.
You know what?
Bring it
At
on.
this point, everything I'm doing is extra credit, so I don't think they're listening to my show anymore, right? They don't care.
So basically, no one's gonna hear us anyway.
Well, my mom, my friend in Cleveland, my brother Aaron listens every time, and he always posts it on his thing.
Do you give him a shout out?
I think I did last time.
You should do your mom this time.
Okay, I'll do it towards shout out to my mom.
Yeah, thanks for listening, Mom.
At the beginning, I was trying not to have too much. I was having fun, but I didn't try to get too, because like we listened to it in the class, and then they go, "Oh, you should have did this." So I don't want to go.
You get critiqued.
Yeah,
critiqued.
But that's what I was saying. Now they're not going to critique my show. So
Is this water for me?
yes, it is. Those are waters.
Nice.
I'm
pretty thirsty after that whole merry-go-round with the parking lot.
Trying to find a parking spot. Yeah.
Right. Let's see. So, I'll get we'll get the pictures right after. You guys want to silence your phones?
I did.
I turned mine off already.
Make sure I'm saying Robert, Jojo, right? Sometimes I've mentioned, oh, yeah, Jojo, and they're like, Joe? I was like, no, Jojo. Joe? You go by Jojo.
Or Jojo.
Call me both.
Okay. And make sure I have, you guys both seem to start in IE2.
Yeah.
Make sure my research was right. You guys opened 10,000 Waves in 2014.
I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds about.
You were at Psycho City in Palmdale. You worked on Melrose, Denmark, and Holland.
Yep.
Let me see what else. You worked on zines. You do shoes and car restoration.
I don't do car restoration.
Oh,
I'm in
you
a
do.
car club.
Car club. Okay, that's good for me to know. And car. Did you guys want to talk
you
about?
could just say, you don't even have to say I'm in a car club. That's not really important. It's more that I have old cars.
Okay.
That's all.
Did you want me to mention the Rick Walters show?
You can.
Okay.
If you want.
And towards the end, I'll ask about like the shop and everyone else that works at the shop, trying to like pitch the other people at the shop too, right? Especially you guys.
Joe's a much better speaker than I am. He's a lot more articulate.
That's fine.
It's totally true.
I'm going to focus on whoever talks the most.
It'll be Joe.
Right?
He's really
He's
really
funnier
articulate.
than I am.
But he's more articulate.
I'm not funny.
I'm a little bit sloppy with my words.
I try to be. When I'm funny, I have to think about it first. He's just funny because he's just funny.
Because I'm an asshole.
So are you guys? Can you hear yourselves okay? Because I have the volumes here.
I can. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can hear myself.
Can you guys hear me?
Here, I can bring.
Okay.
His is the hardest because it's like really far away.
Okay. That better?
Yeah.
Okay.
How's this?
Oh.
Do you like that one? That one's okay?
Is this okay?
Okay. All right. We could just jump in.
Okay, good luck, Joe.
No bad
Are
words.
you nervous? I am.
No bad words.
I had to get it because somebody didn't always bring it up, but
You guys should hang that on the wall.
I think so.
This should be hung on the wall.
There's one behind you.
Yeah.
I'll put it over here. I'll put it here next time, huh?
Lights are going to go off, and then at 5 minutes until the end, that means the lights are going to go off, and you get a 2-minute warning and a 1-minute warning. That's pretty much it. I'm going to, when I start the on-air thing, there's going to be a lot.
Nice shirt.
So if you guys want to like take off your headphones for a little bit, then
Yeah, it's pretty loud. The little boop.
so I'll count you guys.
You kind of okay. There.
Are we on?
When he does the, Hello and welcome to An Ink We Trust, tattoo art and culture in San Fernando Valley. The latest from who is making a mark in the Valley tattoo scene and bringing the tattoo parlor to you. I am your host, Anthony Sanchez. Today we're going to talk to guests from 10,000 Waves in Sherman Oaks. We have tattoo artist Jojo Ackermann and Robert Atkinson. Thanks for coming by the studio, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Both Jojo and Robert started around 1992 in tattoo, seemingly different paths. In 2014, they opened 10,000 Waves. Jojo's been at shops like Psycho City and Palmdale, and Robert's started in Melrose, and he's been in Denmark and Holland. So guys, what was the tattoo scene like for you in the 90s? Jojo, maybe you can start with that.
Well,
It wasn't that much
the
of a
pre-internet tattooing part of it, I mean, it was probably a little more it was a little more risque, I guess, a little more dangerous, a little bit more you had to kind of earn your stripes, I guess, a little bit harder then. It wasn't such a add to cart kind of thing where today everyone goes online and everything's add to cart. Back then we had to have like some kind of like fundamental journeymanship skills where you like had to work on or fix your own equipment by hand and do things because you couldn't just, you know, go online and buy a new one. So we understood a little bit more about like, and plus we had the older generation. If you were lucky enough to, you know, get into a good spot where you had older guys around, you could learn a lot about the history and the culture and where it comes from. So that was a really good thing for me. I came into it through a family-owned business, and I worked there for 16 years. And I learned tattooing not just because, you know, it was our art or whatever. A lot of people get into it, I think, today because of art, but I learned it as a survival tactic and like a way to like keep myself, you know, afloat. So I learned it as a family trade.
Am I hearing that was it keeping you out of trouble or keeping you in trouble?
I mean, you could get in all the trouble you wanted, really. I mean, as long as you could afford it.
So do you still know how to make the guns by hand? Is that something?
The machines, yeah.
Yeah, the machine.
Yeah. I mean, I still know how to do all that stuff. It's not something you really forget because you know, when you first do like your traditional style apprenticeship like the one I did, it's forced on you. Mm-hmm. It's either do this or don't come back. So I didn't have much of a choice.
I'm hearing too, like flash art was a very important part of the early shops.
I still think it is. I mean, I still think it's an important part of tattooing. People that don't know how to draw dragons or anything else, it's like they keep trying to just draw them out of their head and they draw them wrong. But I mean, the reason why the flash exists is so you don't have to draw it. You trace it enough times to figure it out. But
yeah, all the information's there.
Yeah,
definitely. And in the early 90s for me, like I had all my friends chip in and buy me a tattoo kit out of like a tattoo magazine. I had been airbrushing t-shirts at Magic Mountain for a few years, and then I just started tattooing everybody. And the way that Joe got into it was more how I wish I had gotten into it, but it wasn't that there wasn't a lot of people around that were tattooing at the time, and there wasn't a lot of you know, you had to be like in with someone to get the information. People were not like making YouTube videos on how to do this and how to do that. It was very secretive, and it took me at least a couple of years before I learned how to even make a needle, which was like, you know, the first step really in tattooing. So it's just a lot.
Which back then was a really good thing to know because the needles that you had to buy were super expensive.
Yeah, they were expensive, and you know, back in the early 90s, like we didn't really have money for things like we do now that we're older. You know what I mean? I was always broke.
I mean, so now you can get them on Amazon, but before, what the expensive ones were they coming out of like Germany or?
No, there was just like there was tattoo supply companies back then, but like they understood the demand for certain things that required, you know, labor intensive part of the job, and they were trying to, you know, if they cut corners, they got paid for it. So if they made something easier for you, then they were obviously going to profit off of that because, you know, they knew everyone out there was like sitting down for an hour before work every day or an hour at night after work and making needles for the next day. They were like, oh, if we make these things ahead of time, we could sell them for $5 a pop and make a fortune.
Yeah. I used to order mine from a lady in Maryland because I didn't know how to make them. I didn't know anything about it, and there was not a lot of. You had like a Huck Spalding,
Buck Rogers.
Yeah, a Huck Spalding A to Z tattoo book that came with my thing, with my tattoo kit, and it was just very limited information. And I was lucky enough to find somebody that would even sell to me because I didn't work in a shop. And that was the thing back then. If you wanted to get like the real goal for someone beginning was to get into a shop because that's where all the information was going to be, and then you would be able to order supplies from like National or Spalding or
back
whatever.
then they used to want proof of employment, and you would have to like show that you were actually working in a professional studio in order to actually get supplies delivered to you.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah. Well, how did you two meet?
At a tattoo convention.
I think it was that was my first national convention, but my second tattoo convention I had been to, it was in Tucson, right?
96.
96, Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah,
Wow.
we met in the bar at the convention.
That's right. And we were both pretty new.
I
mean,
would advertise the best part about a convention is walking around with the beer and just looking at tattoos all
it
day.
was a wild show.
You know, it was really cool back then. There wasn't cool people in tattooing. I mean, everyone was very cool.
The French guys were cool.
But there was a lot of eccentric people in tattooing back then that were wild. I mean, you'd have a dude come in with like cave drawings tattooed all over him, and he'd be wearing like a loincloth and a big like woolly mammoth headdress, and people really got into it back then. There was a dude, had his teeth all sharpened and dressed like a caveman, and I mean there was just eccentric people that were in tattooing back then that I thought made it very interesting. It was, you know, nowadays those guys show up at a convention and everybody wants to sit in the corner, you know, with, you know, oh, look at this weirdo and stuff. It's like, that's not weird. That's what it was really about at one point. You know what I mean? That's what kind of brought all of us into it to a degree. Like, it was a special thing.
It's a really small culture, right?
Yeah, it wasn't as broad as it is today, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up with tattooing being more punk rock and more just out in the outskirts. Like, you had to find it. For me, it was like coming to Melrose was the place to go to for it, right? Melrose or Sunset.
Yeah. That's where like the artists were working in the early 90s. That's where a lot of the really good tattooers back then, when there was only a handful of them.
Yeah, it was like there, or like go to like Long Beach, like go somewhere where all the sailors, when all the military people get off the boat.
You would go to the Pike. You would go to Bob Roberts, Spotlight Tattoo on Melrose, Body Electric back in our day.
I mean,
what's the big deal?
We were punkers back, you know, up in the high desert when I was growing up in the mid '80s, and we didn't really have anywhere to get tattooed, and the only shop in town was J.R. Grove, and his son Mike Pike had a tattoo shop up there in Palmdale called Tattoo Alley. So we would all save up our money and go get tattooed at the biker tattoo shop because that was the one available to us at the time.
Yeah,
so
bikers
that's kind of how we got into you know, getting tattooed. And I would spend my money I worked at a plumbing place, and we would take the scrap copper and cash it in and then try to go get tattooed and stuff. That was the shop where I started getting all my tattoos at, and then basically because Mike was working there and he was getting ready to break off and start his own place, I somehow through punk rock and just becoming a customer got absorbed into it, like through that vein of activity. You know what I mean? I was brought into it through that, and he told me, you know, hey, quit doing stupid punk rock tattoos on you and your friends and come help me open my shop and blah blah blah. And he took me under his wing and kind of showed me a lot. So, but we would go down to LA and stuff and go to other shops and trip out. Like, we'd see like Mohawk skulls and stuff like that Bob Roberts did and everything. I mean, it's just, you know, the pursuit, you know, once you got into one thing, it led to another, and there was a chain reaction in tattooing back then. I thought that, you know, through the Tattoo Time books and like things that Ed Hardy had put out, and just trying to find the next thing before someone else did, so you had something cool to talk about over a beer or something, you know. And it was, you know, buying books back then and everything was a lot easier. There wasn't a lot of like, you know, miseducated Google search printouts and things like that happening.
There wasn't an overload of information. And I think another thing that's important about what Joe's saying is that his way into it was based more on his relationship with the people, and that's how it was then. If you wanted to learn anything, you needed to like go and get tattooed by the people that you wanted to learn from, and you needed to build a relationship. Nowadays, you know, you wouldn't even see anything, and that was another thing from our generation that was a really big deal for us. And we're like totally on the same page with that. Was the tattoo magazines? They would come out once a month. We would be waiting for it because you know, then you could see like, you know, tattoos from Philip Liu or from Luke Atkinson or from Jack Rudy or all these other people that we all looked up to.
Yeah, Robert's right. I mean, you would get that magazine and there would only be 10 photos of Philip Liu tattoos. And you would be like, dang,
You'd
and
spend
you had
10
them all,
hours looking at
yeah,
them.
and you'd be memorizing them like almost as if they were a song or lyrics or something. You would be like, oh, and then the hand goes that way, and then this is where the flame is, and you would figure it all out because you weren't overloaded with, here's a guy's Instagram page with 800 tattoos on it, Where today, that's the problem. I mean, most of the reference material people are using for tattoos nowadays are somebody else's tattoos.
Yeah.
But
I've
then it was
had
very limited.
guys tell me like, oh, we try not to either. I've had back in San Diego, I have more reference to that, but like they won't work on someone else's sleeve, or they'll be like, I'm gonna draw it my way, but I'm not gonna copy that kind of thing. So I hear that a lot.
I mean, with the not working on someone else's sleeve, like that can also be like I guess it just depends on the kind of tattooer you are, and your level of fame and your level of like earning, and how you live your life. Because me and Joe are both the same with this too. Like we're here to like help people, with tattoos that they're not happy with, to like repair or redo, or get people going in a better direction that maybe didn't have the education that they could have before they started.
Right.
So
yeah, a lot of the tattoos that we're doing nowadays, especially now that we're older, is especially now, even today,
even yesterday,
there's a dip, dodge, and dive around a tattoo that's already there, or a cover up, or something involved in. And anytime we do a sleeve or a back piece, it's rare that we have blank skin. It's rare that there's something that isn't in the way, or something that needs to be taken out, or something involved in all that, because of just people's excitement about tattooing, and the fact that it's been made such a it had such a surge at one point that everybody went out and got tattooed by everybody who thought they could do a tattoo, and now they all want to get good tattoos, but they're all stuck with this one turd that they got at some point. And that's like a regular thing now.
Or even something that's not a turd that maybe they outgrew because it's 20 years old.
True
and,
that.
There's a lot of that.
I mean, yeah, I was lucky that I didn't start until I was like 26, so I had the opportunity to kind of really pick something rather than just kind of going out there.
And
But that's what I'm seeing when I see people's cover-ups. It's like they got this when they were 20.
Yeah.
And they
now
had
they're
fun.
30.
I don't say that from a elitist standpoint either. I'm not a voice of experience. I mean, my forearms are black for a reason. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I've got a little diary of poor choices right
me
here.
too. I'm working on.
It's probably a better symbol of life, anyways, right? That you've done things that you're like.
But we're also like tattooers for the people, and we're here to like help people any way we can with what we do, and that's us staying back from the generation of tattooers that we come from, and we were doing flash, and we were doing everything we could just to get our time tattooing, and to get people happy and do our best,
Right.
It's been a pretty long journey to being able to do what we're capable of doing now, but every day it doesn't evolve around us and artistic ability. There's a lot of problem solving that goes on that him and I work together with on a lot of things,
Yeah. So I know Robert, you did some airbrushing. Do you feel like that's helped with your tattooing so far?
I think that I was so immature artistically then that I didn't really, I drew, but I had no like formal art training. So, using a tool that might have helped a little bit. I was just really excited about doing tattoos, and I loved the idea of, people being like skin being like a really challenging canvas. Plus, I just always liked people, so that was one of my attractions to it. Plus, the fact that it was super, it just was not mainstream at all. It was very against the grain, and I wasn't punk rock. I was more new wave, but I was still into the fact that it was like I didn't really want to have a regular job. When I started tattooing, it wasn't like, oh, I want to do this. It was just something I was doing. And it took a couple of years to get going into like, okay, I need to be a professional. I need to get a job in a shop, and this is where I'm going with my life. But for the first few years, it was just dabbling and just trying to kind of figure out that I was going to need to get around other artists and get into a shop to become a professional.
That's the difference between the generation that that whole era, we were kind of at the tail end of like, I feel like there was like a whole change in tattooing that happened in 2003 with the very first episode of like Miami Ink or whatever.
Which I hear a lot of.
But before that, what he's talking about, I think, is what separates a tattooer from a tattoo artist. And a tattooer, in my opinion, is somebody who, like he said, he likes people. Is more professional. He could fit. Those are all things like you'd show up and you do the flash, and the old saying was like, Ed Hardy drew it, so you wouldn't have to. You know what I mean? Those kind of things. So like we have all these like things installed inside of us that we grew up on with tattooing, as far as we understood it as a traditional thing. Like we understood like all of the things that he's discussing and the things that we talked about a little while ago. But the tattoo artist is someone I feel has artistic ability, but they have nowhere to place it financially, so they get into tattooing, and now they're making money as a tattooer, but they want to listen to their music the whole time, so they put their headphones on. They don't talk to you, or they don't have any social skills, or you got to be a little bit of a carny to be a good tattooer. I think you have to be a little bit of a carny. You have to talk, you have to joke, you have to be able to communicate with your client or customer or whatever you call them. And I think that there's like a huge separation in the sand when someone says they draw a line in the sand. It's more like a trench, because there's a lot of people that are artists that are tattooing now as opposed to tattooers, and tattooer is a little bit different badge you wear. I think like he said, rudimentary art skills, but then it got better as he went on. My mom was an artist and taught me how art, and always encouraged it. I always thought I was a good artist until I became a tattooer, and then I realized how bad I was. I realized, oh my gosh, I'm terrible, and it inspired me to try harder and just keep pushing forward. There's a lot of people that get into tattooing that are already super accomplished at some form of art or another that's like, impressive at sight, you know what I mean? And then they try to apply it to tattooing, and that's where, that's where I see a lot of differences today.
So am I hearing that your joy is more about working with the people than necessarily creating art?
Combination. It's of art. It's all the ingredients. It's a combination of you got to be able to like communicate with somebody about what they want. People come in, they don't even know what they want. They want to get tattooed, and like, what are our ideas? But then you have other people that want to nowadays be more of it's more of a collaboration. They want to be as involved, sometimes too involved, in the designing and the layout and how things should go. And then it takes a lot of energy to do it. Some people are more energy than others, but that's just kind of the name of the game.
That's the non-creative trying to be creative.
That is
through you.
Yes,
you're the robot arm
right.
that they want to program.
Exactly.
And you want to. Yeah, that's a common thing, and it's because of the they've created like a sensation with tattooing through the media to where everybody's semi-tattoo educated now in their own right. So now when I go sit down, I have people that have never gotten tattooed or have a couple of tattoos start throwing shop jargon at me. Almost like
like what needle are you using?
Yeah,
is
that
that
kind of stuff. Yeah, they want to know the name and the brand, and
is that vegan ink?
They want to know too many things about things that they probably don't really need.
Do you guys have vegan ink? That is coming up a lot. I'm hearing that.
I think that it is vegan, actually.
I tasted it. It's vegan.
Okay. I mean, I'd only want steak in mine.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Gluten-free.
Give me that extra blood.
I know you guys met Rick Walters on Sullen TV recently. Was any thoughts about meeting him? Or if you guys met him before? Or?
Oh no,
we've known Rick
we've
forever.
known Rick for decades.
Mm-hmm. We've known Rick. I met Rick in '93 or '94 because JR, Mike Pike's dad, and him were business partners back in the late 60s together on a tattoo shop that was in Gardena called Uncle Flash's. And I met him at the Ink Slingers Ball in Hollywood. They brought me over to the table, and we all kind of talked for a little bit and got to interview. And I met him and Catfish Carl, and they were selling some flash and some machines and stuff. So I bought some stuff and got to talking to him. And then ever since then, we had a like a social thread between us, and we would stay in touch and talk and things like that. So yeah, I've known Rick for a while. Robert knew Rick really well. He tattooed his whole back.
Yeah, I did a back on Rick.
Wow.
I met him at the Blue Cafe like probably 97-ish. And then, we just became friends. And whenever I was living in Europe at the time, so whenever I would come back to LA, I would see him, and I tattooed him a few times down there at Burt Grimm's, and fast forward 20 years, and then Rick was he had, what was it that he had, the CP, what is it?
Yeah, the breathing.
Yeah, he had like
COPD.
COPD. Rick had COPD, and
It's that oxygen tank and stuff.
yeah, he went from being part-time on a tank to full-time on a tank probably about 6 or 8 months ago, and we reached out to him, and we wanted to do an interview with him because no one had really done like a podcast style, like live interview with him. So yeah, we all got in the studio, and we had a really good time. It was great.
Yeah, if anyone wants to check it out, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's on Sullen TV.
Yeah. So why don't we get, as we're getting towards the end here, why don't you guys tell me a little bit about 10,000 Waves? How did you guys come up with starting that?
I was basically, well, when I left the Antelope Valley where I was at, I was in Santa Clarita for a couple years, and I was just getting ready to make a jump and do something else. I had to get out of the Antelope Valley. My head was just, I was already there for too long. I overstayed my tattooing out there, and I've already reached like a pinnacle, and I was kind of hitting a ceiling, and I needed something else to do. I called Robert because I knew he was already down here on Ventura Boulevard. He was working in Studio City, and I was like, I'm thinking about moving farther south, and I just wanted to talk to you and get some ideas from you because I want to make a jump, and I just don't know what to do. And then he called me back the next day, and he goes, we both started in '92. Let's do something together. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And then I was like, automatically, I was like, duh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. So then that was followed by like 2 weeks of him sending me photos of buildings for lease all up down the street. And then, we talked to a couple people, and then he actually ran into a guy that he met through a friend and found a spot, talked to the guy, and then drugged me over there to meet him. So
yeah, we got it, and that was 2014. We built that up, and then it was just you and me in the beginning, and then Manny came. And then after Manny, we expanded. Our landlord retired, and we took the second space.
We had a lot of people that wanted to work with us, and we had a lot of customers that we couldn't take care of, and the people that wanted to work for us, we just put feelers out, and some of them came back, and we thought if we opened up the business and made the building a little bit bigger, we'd have more space. And that's how we ended up where we're at now.
So how many artists you got now in your shop?
I think there's four of us pretty much full time, and then we have a few that are almost full time but like kind of part time, and then a couple other people that just kind of do guest spots.
Yeah, we have people that have appointments in our area, so they'll come and work a day or two. We can take care of their people in our area, and it's kind of weird like that, I guess, in LA, where like I have customers in Irvine, but I also have customers in like Mojave Desert. So it's like, the people drive around and move around, but we seem to be a good middle ground for that. So they come to us. So.
Any future things coming up for you guys at the shop or conventions?
Not really. I don't know. Is there? I can't think of anything. I think it's
we're just in there. We're just in there. Busting.
We're just working.
That's our grown up life. Yeah, just
we just have a routine, and it's it's good. It's
cool.
We don't work together that much. We're kind of a little bit of an opposite schedule because of my kids, and it's a good balance.
Cool. Well, Jojo and Robert, thanks again for coming by the show today. Remind us where they can find you guys at.
We're at 10,000 Waves Tattoo at 13716.5 Ventura Boulevard, Sherman Oaks,
California.
Yeah.
All right, and you can also find Jojo's work at AmericanMadeTattoo.com and Instagram at Jojo Ackermann. Robert has www.AtkinsonTattoo.com, and his Instagram is at Robert Atkinson _tattoo, and the shop is at 10,000wavesgallery.com. And everything will be on the website. Again, Jojo and Robert are at 10,000 Waves in Sherman Oaks. Thanks again, guys. And for more information, go to kpcradio.com. And coming up next, we got Hidden Los Angeles Tattoo. I want to thank you for all listening. I'm Anthony Sanchez. I hope you join me next week.